The final whistle has just gone at the GIO Stadium in Canberra, and spoiler alert, press pause now if you don't want to know the score. The Lions won 36 points to 24, and these are going to be my immediate thoughts directly after the game. So let's get into it. Hello amateurs, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be here with you throughout the Lions series and beyond, so hit subscribe down below to follow along. Okay, pre-game, I just looked in the stadium and it seemed like there were quite a few empty seats. Mostly on the camera side, so you can't really see them. But I'd just love it if these games were sold out. They should be sold out. So something missing there maybe, somehow. And it was a bad start for Blair Kinghorn. Dropping the first high ball. Then he was offside for a penalty along with somebody else as well, actually. Not a great start for Blair. And it would go on to get a little bit worse for him as well, very sadly. The Brumbies, fair play, they picked and went and drove and were really, really patient because actually the Lions came out, I thought, with a real high level of physicality. They had good line speed in some of the opening phases and they battered the Brumbies back on the goal line. But the Brumbies looked after the ball and eventually Tuilima got over for the opening score and 5-0 after 4 minutes. The Lions scrum was a strength all day long, especially with the frontline guys on there, Genge and Furlong, who had a very decent outing. But this Lions scrum absolutely marmalised a Brumbies scrum on the Lions ball. Aki went direct and made great ground, and then there were some great passes from big wide pass from Gibson Park to Russell, and he just offloaded to Chesham in the corner for 5-5. Big Red getting over. He needed a big game as well, and he had a lot of positive impacts in this one. The Lions kick-off receipts. It's been a theme of this tour, and there was an excellent one on 17 minutes where James Lowe had enough time to catch the ball himself and then belt it all the way down the other end of the pitch. We've talked about his left boot and what a weapon it is in terms of clearing lines very often on this channel, and that was a great example of it because the Lions so far during this tour, typically they've received a kick-off and either given a penalty away or given possession to the opposition immediately deep in their own territory. That one, the Brumbies were forced to kick out by some excellent work rate from Tom Curry. Well picked up, Sam Warburton, in the studio on that one. So the Lions ended up with their line out on the Brumbies 40-metre line. That is a massive return from a kick-off receipt, and they need a lot more of those. I mean, that's pretty much gold standard. But yeah, they need to be a lot cleaner on their exits. There was a moment after 20 minutes, which I love. It didn't really go anywhere, but the Lions recognised they had space out wide from deep within their own 22, and the best option to exit was to utilise that space. It was Dan Sheehan in the wide channel, and faced with the fly half, I think, put in one of the most ferocious handoffs I think I've seen in quite a while. I thought his head was going to come off, but that was great physicality from Sheehan. I think you saw a lot of his strengths in this game. He had times where he could really open up in wide channels. He had times where he hit great lines. His line-out throw-in was pretty much on the money as well. I thought Sheehan had his best game of the tour today so far. And I do think the physicality was pretty huge. They mentioned in the studio at half-time that they thought it started a bit soft. I didn't think so. I thought the Lions were out there, and I thought they started as strong in terms of physicality as they have in any game so far. So what they were missing, though, was attacking accuracy and particularly directness in the first 10 minutes. They were still going side to side far too often, in my opinion. It looked a little bit loose. It looked easy to defend, and the Brumbies did that really to great effect mostly. And also the ruck situation still in evidence. Players just not quite understanding each other's roles, not quite understanding which player is going to give me extra leg drive and is going to sort of allow me a second to get to that ruck. People not quite being close enough in support on several occasions, and that meant for a very messy breakdown for the Lions and, yeah, just attacking inefficiency, really. 23 minutes, James Lowe, how did he not score? I picked up, I thought at half-time, that there were just a handful of players, I don't know, like not quite their confident selves, not quite full of beans. And I think James Lowe fits into that category. Imagine that at the Aviva. Imagine him just kind of half slowly running into somebody who's already over the goal line and then failing to get the ball down. It just wouldn't happen. He would have flown in there, ankle high, smashed the bloke out of the way and grounded the ball. I thought that was an indication, and there was a few others as well who I thought just were, I don't know whether it's the pressure of this being like the last game before the test for probably a lot of these players or what. I'm not sure, but I thought a few of them were just slightly off it, and that was a good example of what I'm talking about. And this was the moment for Blair Kinghorn. He got a knock about 10 minutes in, and they weren't sure about it. He looked like he was trying to run it off. And then it got to the point after 25 minutes where he was like, right, no, okay, this is not right. It's not going to get better during this game. So they hooked him off and got Marcus Smith on. Terrible bad luck for Kinghorn. Terrible bad luck for the Lions fullback situation. If that's a bad one and he's out for the tour, that really makes them... I mean, Keenan's still a fine player, but he needs to come back to form after injury and illness as well. Yeah, it's tricky for the Lions at fullback in that respect. However, Marcus came on and diffused a bomb immediately because the Lions' aerial game overall during this opening period actually wasn't that great. They lost a few in the air. Now, it must be said, the aerial game, it's a lot more 50-50 now. And then quite often it actually favours the team who are kicking the ball because they get a good run up and jump to go and get it. So we're not going to see Freddie Stewart, for example, who dominated the air for England for so many years. It's just not going to happen anymore because of the new laws in terms of shepherding or the lack of shepherding. Those contests are a lot more evenly balanced. The centres. I thought Ringrose and Aki went really well today. I thought it was the best performance by a pair of centres we've seen on this tour. And I think one of the key things to that was their tackling. And Tommy Freeman got a turnover because of Gary Ringrose. Incredible chop tackle, straight at the knees. And he landed literally at Freeman's feet. And it was like, there's a turnover, just take it. And it's that type of tackle that we need to see more of. If they're not going to pick them up and drive them backwards, need to get them down quickly to create turnover opportunities. Tommy Freeman taking that one. And he had another strong game today. Not free of errors. I don't think anybody was free of errors in this game. Even the sort of the better players. I think Conan was strong throughout, but he had a couple of errors in him as well. Yeah, everyone did, to be honest. But James Lowe did get over for a try shortly afterwards, and there were two brilliant passes here. Joe McCarthy, who I would say is, potentially not really known for that, but he got really flat to the line. And most importantly, his pass back out the back to Finn Russell was super accurate. It was right there for Finn to take, and that means that every option is on after that. I think the handling, the passing accuracy has not been great consistently for the Lions. So that accuracy of that pass was superb. Ringrose looked like he was going to go through half a hole himself, but such smart play by him. He recognised that players either side of him had turned right in, but they were probably going to get him. So he got the ball wider, and that led to Lowe getting over in the corner for 12 points to 5. But the Lions had another sloppy exit afterwards. It was a line out deep in their territory, throw over the top, which was allowed to bounce. Conan managed to regather that, but there was some miscommunication there, or that maybe the throw wasn't quite right. I'm not sure, but that needs to be spot on. These things need to be spot on. Itoje carried the ball up at the next ruck, and they got turned over. And those situations, again, there's so much control that the team with the ball has in those situations. To be turned over like that there is almost unforgivable. And this was a common theme throughout, actually, and I think I've identified one of the reasons. So many of the Lions clearers end up off their feet, and end up off their feet early, which means that they're then essentially not in that ruck. And if you can get a counter in there, or you can get somebody in there to steal the ball, then it makes it really messy at best for the Lions, or it's a turnover at worst. And that happened repeatedly today. I think the Lions really need to fight to stay on their feet in the rucks longer. All right, and that led directly to the try. Tall getting over into the corner after a line-out drive had been repelled by the Lions. Yeah, 10-12. And it was looking very close. And the Brumbies, I thought, turned up with huge physicality. I thought they turned up with huge endeavour. They weren't on the same class as the Lions, but they were really making a game of this. Just before half-time, though, the Lions got some breathing space. And it led to Marcus Smith getting over for a try. And the difference here, the thing that I want to really highlight is the Lions' shape. their attacking structure was much more compact. Okay, so what that means is that the passes are shorter and they're typically more north to south. They're more out the back rather than across the pitch. As soon as a pass goes across the pitch like that, as soon as it's in the air for a long time, it allows defenders time to adjust and read what's going on. This shape was really tight, and that led to Gary Ringrose going through a hole. He went through several all day, and it was because of this direct shape that the Lions achieved at times. I thought Ringrose was excellent both sides of the ball. That led to a ruck. Russell got the ball to Tom Curry again on a very short line, very direct, very compact. He went through half a hole, offloaded to Smith for 19-10 at half-time. And on the scoreboard, reasonably comfortable. But as a game, the Lions had still a lot to work on. A couple of themes from the first half. The Lions were looking to regather the ball from kickoffs. When Kinghorn was on the pitch, actually, to be fair, they stopped it afterwards, but they were looking to kick short and get Kinghorn up to retrieve the ball. And just the big one, it's the nuts and bolts that I think are really missing from the Lions. Those exits, one from a kickoff, one from deep in their territory, they have to be 100% exits. They have to be really clear on that. And again, the breakdown work, it's not good enough. And it's not just actually the ruck, it's the situation before the ruck, how players are reacting to breaks or players being tackled. It's all of that stuff. Okay, Tom Curry, early in the second half, 2 errors in quick succession. First, they were in some intricate phase play, and he passed directly to the opposition 14 somehow. I'm not quite sure how that happened. And then gave a penalty away a minute later for playing the 9. I thought Curry brought all the things that we've talked about pre-game. He brought that physicality. He brought intense work effort. But he did have errors in him again today. A couple of handling errors. Couple of penalties that were unnecessary. This penalty was unnecessary. I'm not sure if he was seeing red a little bit, having just thrown the intercept, but I thought there was lots of good from Curry, but it was far from perfect. The Lions, though, were very good at set piece. I've mentioned the scrum already, and the line out went very well too. Although Itoje's carrying on, he does like to call the ball to himself in congested areas, and if the throw's not spot on, it can allow potential turnover opportunities at the line out. There were several today that were touch and go where Itoje's put himself up between the two defending pods, and they won them all, I think, but there were some very close calls, and maybe against the Wallabies you won't get those. However, there was a second turnover line out in quick succession here early in the second half, and I don't know if you picked it up on commentary or from the TV, but there was an Irish voice calling exactly what the offence was. So it was the receiver stood in the scrum half position, so to speak, and the Irish voice just said, "He's coming in, he's in, that's illegal." And the referee went, "Yeah, you're right, it is," and gave a penalty to the Lions. But it was just so great to hear, like, the Lions just talking through exactly what's happening in the game, being aware, and that was as much, that's as much for them as it was to potentially influence the referee, because everybody needs to sort of say what they can see, and it could help make other people make a decision. Gary Ringrose mentioned him a few times earlier, and he got his try after 47 minutes. And again, it's that thing that I was talking about, compact shape, and then running direct and running hard, choosing when to step and when to take the front line option. He did it a lot, and Aki did it a lot more today as well. And as a result, I thought they both looked much more effective. Ringrose went through the middle, passed it off to Marcus. Marcus grubbered through, and Ringrose scooted through and had plenty of time, really, to score himself. Gibson Park could have scored it if he hadn't have done. That was 26 points to 10 there, and it kind of looked like game over, to be honest, at that point. I think the Brumbies were fading a little bit. However, Maro Itoje dropped the kickoff, and it just led to more pressure on the Lions. And it's, again, a common theme throughout the tour. These things, when you get to Test match rugby, have to be perfect or near as damn it if they're going to really stand a chance to put in a big performance. The Brumbies were good with the ball in hand. They looked after it. I think they created some pressure and some penalties. It led to a scrum, which they won comfortably. And then Toole, wasn't it, came in on a short line. Ringrose was trying to put pressure on. Gibson Park was putting pressure on from the side of the scrum, and Freeman just stood flat-footed and did nothing, frankly. He either had to come in and smack the guy who scored or drift out and be on the wide outside, but really he did nothing. So there was a disconnect there, and they really need to fix that, because I think Freeman's been excellent in almost every aspect of his game during this tour, but some of his decision making, there was one early on in the Argentina game, this one here, and I think there's been one or two in every game. He really needs to tidy that up to be a consistent test match player. 57 minutes, Josh van der Fleer had a non-try from a driving line out, and I mentioned this because that's not the only one. There was the lower one earlier, and Chesham, with the last play of the game, also, it looked odds on to score, and he's somehow got held up as well. So, I mean, that's 3 tries that any other day would have definitely been scored, and the scoreboard would have looked way different then, would have been well into the 50s. So, yeah, you look at the score and think they probably should have done more, and it shouldn't have been, maybe shouldn't have allowed the Brumbies quite as many, but there's some, three absolute gold stamp tries there that the Lions have somehow failed to score. And that led to them kicking a penalty shortly afterwards to go 29-17 up. And that kind of told a story, really. I don't think they were ever going to really be in with a chance of losing this game. But at that point of the game, you don't know. And actually just extending the lead to 12 points instead of 9 is enough scoreboard pressure to just change the game slightly. He told you drop that kickoff as well, but they got away with that one and cleared up the park. The bench were pretty much all on by this stage, and I think actually all of them had a pretty positive contribution. But Henry Pollock did look the busiest, in my opinion. He looked fresh, and he added that thing in the last sort of quarter of this game, which could be invaluable in the test if they go with him, because his ability to hit a line at a pace and a speed that seems to just be still so unexpected to the players he played against. He did one, I think it was off of a Gary Ringrose pass in a wider channel, got that fend off, handed off, broke another tackle, and he was inches away from finishing that one as well, like he just got stragged by the touchline. But that could have been another proper highlight reel moment for Pollock in this game. There was another catch and drive. Van der Fleer again at the back of this one, and he only just got this one down. Again, there's a real skill to knowing exactly what to do. It's so easy to get dragged over with the players in front of you, and then as it collapses, there's nowhere for you to go. There's just legs everywhere. So somehow you've got to, and it's not just you, the players in front of you need to know to kind of let you go a little bit so they can drive clear of the line and then leave open grass for you to put the ball down on. But that one did get scored, 36-17. But the Brumbies came back again, and fair play to them. Their pick and go game was solid. I mean, I think this is another area where the Lions have probably just got to look at a little bit of detail, because they were aggressive enough, they were ferocious enough, but they have to affect what the attacking team's doing a little bit more. They have to either stop them or disrupt them or find a way to get them driven backwards, because the Brumbies scored 2 pick and go tries, and I think the Lions will be disappointed with that. As I mentioned earlier, Chesham should have scored with the last play but didn't, which left it 36-24. And just a slight feeling of, there's a lot there to still improve. I was impressed, though, when the attack narrowed and they were more direct. That's what I think we'll see more of. I think we saw more of the Lions playing territorial rugby. I think they kicked more from within their own half, particularly Gibson Park. If he didn't get quick ball in and around the halfway line, was quite happy to box kick, which we haven't seen a lot of on this tour so far. I thought the scrum was excellent throughout, and also the defensive line speed. Still some bits to tidy up on the edges with decision making, still some bits around the goal line defence that they'll probably want to fix based on today, but there were some big pluses from the Lions, and I think overall they'll be happy. Obviously, they'd want to have a better score, they'd want to have a better performance, but don't forget, it is all about the test series. And if we had a perfect performance now, maybe it wouldn't be as perfect in the coming weeks. So I'm happy with how they're building. It still seems to be a little bit plug a hole there, another one springs up here, plug that one, another one springs up. But they're heading in the right direction. The two things that they definitely need to tidy up are the breakdown and everything around that. It's the attacking shape, it's the support structures which lead to breakdown issues, and then the breakdown itself in terms of staying on their feet and exiting. They need to be a lot cleaner with their exiting. But I think the bench did well, and I thought Marcus actually also showed some really good game management at times. When the ball wasn't quick, or he sort of looked up and he's seen they're numbered off sort of in the middle of the park somewhere, he put a couple of lovely kicks in down the right-hand side. So I thought he did pretty well off the bench as well. The big players, the players that we kind of spoke about beforehand, needing big games, how did they do? Ty Furlong, I thought he was great. I thought he's not there yet, but he's much, much closer to where he needs to be if he's going to be a test starting Lion again. And based on this performance, I think he will be. I thought Ollie Chesham was busy. I thought he carried really well throughout. His line-outs unmatched in this Lions squad. I thought he did enough today as well to get a potential test start. Tom Curry, it's tough with him because he still had those errors, but they'll be judging. They won't be looking at those so much because he typically in his game, he rarely makes errors like he's making at the moment. There were fewer today than in previous games, but his work rate and his physicality was still there, off the charts. He was really banging some people, and I thought he had a pretty solid game. But the big ones for me, I think Aki and Ringrose, I thought they looked back to nearly where their best is. Again, not quite there. Probably a little bit of getting used to playing with Finn Russell. Probably a little bit of how the Lions' game plan has been. But when things got narrowed, when things got tightened up and they're playing those tiny little short passes, I thought they looked much better and they made a load of ground through the midfield. The big question mark now, though, is fullback. Will Kinghorn get fit? If not, will Keenan come back and regain form? If not, where do they go from there? Marcus is definitely next in line, I think, based on selections so far this tour. But there's other players that can play fullback too. What do you think? That is what I think about this game. I thought it was a good hit out, and I thought the Brumbies can be very proud of what they did. They provided a big physical test for the Lions. Let me know in the comments down below any players I mentioned that you think maybe didn't play as well as I thought they did, or maybe the reverse. Maybe you thought they played really well, whereas I only thought they were okay. What about players that I didn't mention? There'll be some in there. Who do you think played well, or who do you think maybe possibly played themselves out of a test spot? Let's hear it in the comments down below. We'll join you there for a friendly conversation. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there. If you don't mind, it helps other great rugby fans just like you find it, and you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And don't forget to get out and play.